And are we gonna be out there for? No. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 4:01 p.m. So we respectfully acknowledge that we all live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Lheidli T'enneh Nation, the Tsimpe Nation, and the McLeod Lake Indian Band. We'll just move on to the approval of the agenda.
Chair, I have one amendment for 821 to 824. They'll bring forward a motion later on, if they could.
You'll bring that forward later today or tonight? Okay. So can I have an approval of the amended agenda for this evening?
Yeah.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Thank you, Jillian. All in favor? That's unanimous. So moving on to school district news, trustee Betty Beckering would like to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to acknowledge the amount of work that students are putting in to entertain our community. And I went to an event at the Civic Center in early February. It was a very snowy day. And all of a sudden, all of the students from the intermediate band and senior band of DP Todd were filing onto the stage, all carrying their music stands, instruments, a chair, and it was just the best concert. And everyone that was attending the event were just totally entertained. And I just thought we need to acknowledge that our students are out there, they're committed, they're talented, and they are entertaining, and the audience loves them. So I just wanted to say that. Thanks.
Thanks, Betty. Any other school district news that'd like to be shared at this time? Okay. So moving on, we will have our presentation now. 5.1 is literacy and numeracy. Nancy Reed, literacy resource teacher, and Jennifer Dion for numeracy resource teacher.
Okay. Thanks for inviting me to come and speak with you today. I'm here to share some good news stories about things that I get to experience in my role as literacy resource teacher. And specifically, I'll be speaking to 3 ongoing projects that I get to be a part of with various teachers in our district. I'll be speaking to assessment supports that I've been part of providing. I'll be talking about collaboration blocks that I get to take part in with other teachers in our district. And I will be speaking to a very exciting project that I get to take part in with Takla First Nation in a literacy project. To start off with, we'll talk about assessment supports that have been provided for educators. when we think about assessment, we do need to talk about the purpose of it. Ultimately, as educators, it is to inform our practice. We need to figure out what are the students' stretches and strengths. We need to figure out where they are in their learning, where do they need to go next, and what do they actually need in order to do so. And when we're looking at assessment in the classrooms in our district, we are making use of 3 specific ones in the area of literacy in what we would call an interval assessment, something that happens only at specific times of the year. So for kindergarten through grade 7, we're using something called the Benchmark Assessment System, also known as the BAS for reading. For grade 8, we are using what is called the Nonfiction Reading Assessment. We shorthand that to the NEFRA. And for kindergarten through grade 8, we are doing a writing snapshot with a focus on personal narrative writing. We did make the decision this year to offer sort of 3 layers of support. One was in how to make use of the various resources themselves. So how can we use it in an effective way? We offered what we called supported collaborative marking sessions, where teachers were invited to participate and come together to support each other as they're looking at the results of doing the assessments. And what the next layer is what we were calling the now what. So I've done this assessment, now what do I do with the information that I have gained from it? So in terms of how this rolled out for Robson Valley and Mackenzie, we did offer actual face-to-face opportunities. In the fall, we were out in those various communities and we got to work with the teachers in the schools, both secondary and elementary, and it was a wonderful opportunity to be able to actually be face-to-face with them. In terms of the supportive collaborative marking and the now what sessions, we did offer it in terms of an online opportunity. And it was usually paired with the similar things happening here in Prince George. So it was more of a hybrid model where we were face-to-face with the teachers here in Prince George, but online with those out in the outlying communities. And as I just spoke to in Prince George, all layers of the support were offered in face-to-face. So those were offered at different times early in the year, and everybody was invited to participate if they so chose to and needed to. The second project that I'm going to speak to is one that is near and dear to my heart, and it is the collaboration blocks. Overall, this is actually year 4 that some form of collaboration blocks have been happening in our district. I'm going to speak specifically to the Rural Schools Network. This is the 2nd year for it. One of the things that we learned when we were on the online learning during the pandemic was how to make use of things like Zoom and Teams meetings. So we have, we did invite various schools to participate in it. You can see on the screen the schools that are participating now. Basically what this amounts to is that the teachers are released during the school day for an hour at a time with a schedule in place. Like for example, today I met with 2 teachers from Belmont and we met online and talked about all things literacy and the resources that are involved in teaching and supporting learners. Here in Prince George, again, you can see listed on the screen the schools that are participating this year. The only difference between that and the rural schools network is that it actually happens face to face, because I can actually drive there in a reasonable amount of time. And the third version of the collaboration blocks actually does involve the teachers at the community school on Tackle Nation, and I'll speak more to that in a few moments. The collaboration blocks that I've just spoken to are actually scheduled in every week. I am by no means meeting with every teacher in every school every week. I would need to be cloned to be able to do that, and that's not something we want to have happen. But so far, since the beginning of November, in the formal collaboration block model, I've met with 64 teachers so far and supported them in all things literacy. Sort of offshoot of that, in terms of collaboration, not necessarily during the school day, usually it does take place after school. I do collaborate with other teachers, that's usually by request. And so far this year, it's 44 teachers. So that's, I did do the math about the actual contact hours, and I think it was close to 300 so far this year. So I'm pretty excited about that. When, whoops, wrong button. One of the things that I think really does tell the story about the success of the collaboration blocks is hearing from the teachers themselves. And the quote that's up on the screen right now is one that I received from a grade 1-2 teacher from one of the Prince George schools. And I think you can see by reading it that it actually does have great meaning to the teachers that have been able to be a part of it. When we're looking at the power of what collaboration can be for everybody, it truly does lend itself to helping us as we work towards the 4 directions of our strategic plan. And at the core of it is about the relationships. And the relationships, you know, from my perspective, between myself and my colleagues in the department, you'll hear from one of them in a little bit, but between myself and the teachers and their students and their families. And it has great impact and meaning for everybody involved. The next one that I'm going to speak to, it actually gives me goosebumps every time I think about it. We had an opportunity brought forward to us by Brian Toll. Brian Toll was both a teacher and a principal in our district for many years. Currently, he is actually working with Tackle Nation to support their students, both here in Prince George and on Tackle Nation as well. Their students do come to Prince George for grade 10 and up. And one of the things that they have recognized is that their learners need support with literacy. So a long story made a little bit shorter. The nation purchased a significant amount of literacy resources to support both classroom instruction and intervention. One of them is called Haggerty Phonemic Awareness, can be used both in classroom and for intervention, Flyleaf Phonics and Decodable Text, and the Level Literacy Intervention, shortened down to the LLI. The decision was made to purchase those by the nation because what we know about learners is that one size does not fit all. So teachers need to have access to resources that opens up the opportunity to be better able to support the learners. So I was invited to come out to Tackle Nation. It was a very interesting ride up. I have to say I haven't been out on those kinds of forestry roads for a long time. I was welcomed with open arms to this community, and we spent 5 days in there. Brian was with me. We did a deep dive into the resources themselves and looked at the possibilities of how they can be used with the students. We did lesson demonstrations. We talked about how it can be organized and set up within the class to better support the learners. We had supported with assessments and organization, and in connection to the collaboration blocks that I've already spoken to, they are now a part of the North Schools Network, and they actually just did a collaboration block with one of their teachers today. So it's really very, very exciting. And the movement that has already happened in this community is absolutely amazing. I think this quote says a lot about what it means to, I think, not just to the one teacher, but to all of them. And based on the conversations that I've already had with actually all 3 of the classroom teachers, they are just on fire now with what's going on, and they're already seeing some great progress with the students. The next 2 slides are comments that have been shared by the General Manager of Operations for Tackle Nation, Scott Hickling. I'll give you just a moment to take a look at what he has to say. And I think you can see that there is a real true commitment to moving forward with what they know that needs to happen for their learners. And the next slide is from Holly West, who is their Education Employment Manager. She has been instrumental in helping us get things rolling here, to the point the latest sort of addition to all of this is because of the local education agreement that we have with Tackle Nation. The teachers are now going to be able to borrow resources from our district learning commons, and TACLA is facilitating getting the resources to and from the nation. So the teachers are very excited about that. So just to wrap things up, so what do I know? At the core of everything that our teachers do, they do have centers at the center of everything. I know that teachers need to have access to a variety of resources to be able to better meet the needs of their learners. As I stated earlier, one size does not fit all. Any of you that have had the opportunity to be in any of our schools, you've probably seen that in action. Some people are making use of the LLI because that's the fit for their students. Some people are now making use of the Heggerty because it's a fit for their students. So teachers are really working hard to make sure that that happens. Teachers need to have the dedicated time to be able to collaborate with each other. There's a great deal of research out there right now shows that one of the greatest, what they call effect size in terms of affecting positive student learning is when teachers are able to work together to meet the needs of their students. And the other thing that I know for sure is that teachers are engaging in reflective practice. If you've ever had that opportunity yourself, you know that that's not an easy thing to do. But teachers in our district are willing to ask those difficult questions about their own instructional practice. They are willing to investigate which resources and instructional practices will work best for their students, and they are implementing the best instructional strategies for the kids. The trends that we are seeing is that there is a use of research-based instructional strategies, also known as high yield. I've spoken to some of the resources already. They are research-based. They are not something that we are buying, I'll just say off the side of the road kind of thing. They are truly things that are based in what works well for kids. There is use of ongoing literacy assessment practices, and we are seeing a lot of amplifying of foundation skills instruction in the area of phonological awareness and phonics. So thank you for inviting me to share.
Thank you very much for coming tonight. Are there any questions that the trustees would like to ask? Oh, Erica. Yes, just one moment.
No questions, just a comment. I know we've had similar conversations before, but thank you so much for your care and energy and passion that goes into this. It's very inspiring.
Hi. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Jennifer Dion. I'm the numeracy helping teacher for School District 57. I'm excited to be here sharing my passion with those of you who I've presented to before and to those of you who I'm meeting for the first time. This afternoon, I'll be talking briefly about three things: shifting mathematical mindsets, the collaboration support that I'm fortunate to be part of, and finding math in Indigenous stories. When students aren't thinking, everything is difficult. When students are thinking, anything is possible. This is a quote from Peter Lejeudal, who is a world-renowned mathematician. Peter lives in Vancouver and has conducted much of his research in our province. He is currently working with Nechako Lakes Vanderhoof, and some educators from our district are participating in this work. Now more than ever, we need to support our learners to become thinkers who are able to apply math and numeracy to the world around them. One of the ways we can support this is by shifting our attitude towards mathematics and numeracy. We want to move away from saying, I'm just not a math person. My family is not a math family. I never really learned how to do math. We want to move towards a growth mindset where we think anything is possible. Students who are thinking, applying, and feeling confident about math will persevere when applying mathematics to our BC curriculum and to their world. In Social Studies 10, students ask questions, gather, interpret, and analyze ideas and data about World War I. Students who are confident applying numeracy skills will be able to compare the size of the country's armies to their navies and the effect this had on being prepared for this war. Later in the timeline, students will be better able to make sense of how fluctuating wheat prices led to the Great Depression and how countries converted vast amounts of farmland to wheat production. Another example from our curriculum is the chemistry unit in Science 7. Students use numeracy skills to find averages and round and record data. Feeling confident about math and numeracy helps us understand our rapidly changing world. I'm fortunate to work with teachers in our district in a variety of capacities to support them to feel confident teaching math. If a teacher is excited and confident about a subject, it is contagious, and the students will feel the same way. Some of the ways I support include mentoring new teachers, modeling lessons, one-on-one support, embedded collaboration blocks, presentations at staff meetings, resource teacher meetings, and professional development days, supporting new math resources, and engaging in long and short-term projects. I'm currently co-planning and co-teaching a decimal unit with a teacher who graduated in December and immediately accepted a grade 4-5 position. Earlier today, I was in this class and there was some excitement as the students realized that subtracting decimal tenths was similar to subtracting whole numbers. In whichever capacity that I'm working with teachers, I always encourage them to include high yield routines into their practices. These routines are accessible for all learners and provide the opportunity to hear other students thinking. Each one of these squares is an odd one out for a different reason. This is a great opportunity for students who often do not participate in math discussions to feel safe doing so. Students first discuss this in small groups or with partners. Then we gather for a large group discussion. Nancy might notice that the green square is different from the others because there are circles around the stars. Cindy might notice that the blue square is addition and the other three are multiplication. And Cap notices that the circles in the yellow square are lined up vertically, and in the other three squares, the stars are horizontal. All of these responses can generate rich classroom discussions, and everybody has a chance to say something. One of the long-term projects that I have been working on is a province-wide project. This project involves mentoring teachers to find math in Indigenous stories. I was passionate about finding a story that was connected to Lheidli T'enneh. Rhonda Gerard is a Métis author who lives on the traditional unceded territory of Lheidli T'enneh, and she published the first salmon run in 2022. So this was just published last year. I worked with a grade 5-6 teacher to co-teach a unit on time, including elapsed time. Rhonda visited the classroom and shared her story and read the first salmon run to the class. You could have heard a pin drop. The students were so engaged in listening to Rhonda. Her visit inspired students to know that everyone is capable of achieving their goals and dreams. The next day, the teacher and I connected the story to elapsed time. Students then went on to share their own stories in a format that they got to choose that demonstrated their understanding of elapsed time. And every single student in that class did an amazing job. I'm going to leave you with a final quote about how all of you can become a math person.
Thank you very much. That was well needed. Is there any questions from the trustees? Any comments? Okay. Okay, we will move on to the minutes of the previous meetings, 6.1 and 6.2. Are there any additions or deletions that need to happen? Or can I get a motion to approve, please? A motion. Thank you, Erica. Second, Jillian. Thank you very much. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Business arising from the minutes. Is there anything to discuss? No? Okay. And we'll move on to old business now. And I think this is where 8.2, okay. This is the 2023-24 amended school calendar, and Lee Karpenko will be speaking on that.
Thank you, Chairperson Weber. Awesome. Thank you, Chairperson Weber. I will take you out of the board book and to the handouts that you have before you. And this has been revised since Friday as we found out new information from BCPC. And so I am going to read the recommendation that the local school calendar for the 2023-2024 school year be received as amended. And the background information is as follows. The school district calendar committee, to which all rights holders and stakeholders groups were invited to send 2 representatives, convened twice this school year. The committee met on January 25th and again on February 6th of this year. The committee was advised that revisions are required to the 2023-2024 calendar to correctly reflect Remembrance Day statutory holiday observed on November 13th. It was previously on November 9th, and that was an error. And we also made an accommodation request from the Prince George District Teachers Association to reschedule the January 31st non-instructional day to January 29th, 2024, I believe that should say. Look at that, I found a typo, all right. And these dates for non-instructional days were determined in consultation with the Prince George District Teachers Association. And then finally, a third, I guess, a piece of rationale or new information. In 2023, the National Truth and Reconciliation Day falls on a Saturday, and that's Saturday, September 30th. BCPC recommends aligning the BC government's decision to honor the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation on Monday, October 2nd. So that is reflected. So the 3 changes that I outlined in the background are reflected in the calendar that you've received in front of you today.
Thank you, Lee. Can I have a motion, please, to accept the 23-24 amended school calendar? Thank you, Craig. And may I have a seconder? Thank you, Erica. Questions, comments? Okay. All in favor of the recommendation for the 2022-23 amended school calendar? And that is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to bring forward a motion for consideration by fellow trustees that the final approval of policies 1 through 9, 12, 17, 23, 24, and 25 be, be tabled until the June 27th, 2023 public meeting of the board.
Thank you, Craig. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Corey. And we're going to discuss now. Yes. Yep, go ahead. Oh, just a second. Go ahead. There you go.
On Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023, trustees participated in a policy workshop that was very well received. The discussion and questions helped trustees gain a deeper understanding and knowledge of policy development and implementation. I recommend delaying the final approval of policies 1 through 9, 12, 17, 23, 24, and 25 until this new board has the opportunity to further review and discuss this important work. And I want to thank our Secretary Treasurer for leading that session, and I look forward to more of them. So that's my rationale.
Thank you, Craig. Any comments from the trustees?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, just a second.
So
Go ahead, Betty.
our, that sounds very loud. Anyway, this has been a 2.5-year process, and tonight was going to be the final approval. And this has come out of almost left field to defer again until June. And I think that it's been through so many vettings and so diligently looked at every policy. It's gone out twice for consultation. It was approved in principle in June, and it's time now to finalize approving these policies, and it cannot be deferred again. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. I will note that our new board of trustees needs the time to adequately feel that they are confident in making these choices. And if they feel that they need more time, I am okay with that. I would rather allow them more time to be confident in their decision-making as a board than to pass something that they're not confident in. Anyone else?
I think that's why we deferred it until today, was to allow the time to go through and question any of us about the policies, whether it be senior admin or whoever, to clarify what these policies are about. And the fact that they are all now in practice in our school district, we are using them on a day-to-day basis based on the approving them in principle. Today is the final day for approving these. There does not need to be any more time. There can be, they're not written in concrete. They can be brought forward as we move forward as a final approval for changing them or revising them. They can be brought forward to one of our standing committees and be acted on. They do not need 2 more months or 3 more months of vetting and understanding.
Thank you, Betty. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment? We'll have Corey and then we'll have Erica. Just one moment, Corey. Kate, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm in support of this because I wish I could go back in time and be part of all of what Trustee Beckering was part of. But I want to respect that they have put in a lot of work. But I do still believe that with most new trustees, I would rather take extra time and do something thorough and take extra time than vote on something or potentially abstain from voting on something that I don't feel comfortable moving forward with. So I'm in support of taking a little bit more time to really go through, and individually we've had time to look through these, but as a group we've not. As a group, we've not had that time to really discuss and go through this as the 7 and have these discussions. So individually, I'm looking through it, but what I view may be different from what many others view. And I think we have a very diverse board, and through conversation from all our differences and coming together, I think we'll make something that's really robust and serve our diverse community to the best we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Erica.
Mine was a question, a thought for reflection actually from the group, and hopes maybe that I could get some insight. I'm curious if our board does decide to delay these. For example, if I have some feedback or something that I wish to adjust or revise, not necessarily rescind entirely, but what is the cost of doing that now versus adopting our policies finally and then revisiting them?
Darlene, go ahead.
So it would be the same either way. The policies are currently the policies that we're following. So whether it's an adjustment to the policies before they're adopted and final, or whether it's a revision that goes through, both would need to go back for more, I guess, feedback, because it's about that collaborative piece when you're putting together the policies.
Thank you, Darlene. Any other question? Oh, Jillian, just one moment. There you go.
Thank you. There have been a lot of opportunities for some input into many of these policies, and some of those recommendations are actually coming forward tonight that do change wording slightly and make some of our policies a little bit more clear and whatnot. And I'm reluctant to keep putting something off. This is what we are doing, and we've received a significant amount of input, and there's been lots and lots of opportunities for questions and from all of the trustees at this table. If these have been brought forward to advisory, we've had a full workshop on these. Again, I just feel that there's some really great work that's been done on these and some input to make them even better. And I would hate to put that off until June to do that work when a lot of work has already gone into that.
Thanks. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. So hearing no more comments, we will go ahead and vote on the recommendation to hold off until the June meeting. Is that correct? Yes, till the June 27th meeting. Okay, so all in favor to hold off on the recommendations of approving? All opposed? Thank you. It has been passed. So next we will talk on 8.2.5, final approval of bylaw 2, which is the bylaw 2 indemnification on page 101 of your agenda package. And Darlene will read the recommendation.
The recommendation included in the agenda package is that bylaw 2 indemnification, which received first and second readings June 22nd, 2022, be given third and final reading. This bylaw is not currently in practice in the district. It was not adopted in principle. This would be the first adoption of this for the district.
Thank you. Do I need a motion?
You need a mover.
I need a, yeah, so I need a mover, please. Thank you, Craig, and a seconder. Thank you, Erica. Now we just open it up for discussion. Any trustees have any discussion or questions? Sorry, was we pause for a minute? Any recommendations, questions, any comments on this bylaw? Okay, hearing none. We will vote. All in favor of the recommendation that bylaw 2 indemnification, which received first and second readings, June 22nd, 2022, be given third and final reading. All in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you. Was that unanimous? Everyone? Was that unanimous?
It was unanimous.
Yes. We'll move on to business committee, 9.1, the committee report, and I'll pass this over to trustee Brennan.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to bring forward the recommendation that the report of the business committee meeting held on February the 14th, 2023 be received.
Thank you, Jillian.
Several highlights. First of all, we met on February the 14th, 2023. Some of the highlights included a director of human resources providing a staffing update with some encouraging news there. So thank you very much for that update. Also, we received from the director of finance a financial update, which indicated that all schools and departments are currently on target for budget spending for the year. So that's wonderful news to have. And then the last big one we'll come back to, which will be the amended annual budget. And that's a little bit later on this agenda. And that's it for next meeting. Will be on April the 11th.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, and we'll move on to 9.2. Oh, we're going to vote to accept the committee report. So all in favor? And that is unanimous. 9.2, 2022-23 amended annual budget on page 105 of your agenda package.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I will be bringing forward the amended annual budget bylaw 2023 with this recommendation that in accordance with section 68, section 68.4 of the School Act, all three readings of the amended annual budget bylaw 2022-2023 be given at this meeting.
May I have a seconder? Thank you, Erica. Okay, we'll open it up for discussion. Any trustees have any comments or questions? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote. All in favor? That is unanimous. Then we'll just, yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll also like to move then that the amended annual budget bylaw 2022-23 be given first reading.
May I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Jillian.
I'm ready. Thank you. So the rationale for this is that in accordance with section 113(2) of the School Act, the Minister of Education is requiring that amended annual budget for 2022-23 be prepared. The amendments to the annual budget passed by the board on June 22nd, 2022 reflect an updated estimate of operations based on actual student enrollment at September 29th, 2022. Section 68(1) of the School Act requires a bylaw to be given 3 distinct readings. Section 68(4) allows the board to give all 3 readings at one meeting if the members of the board who are present at the meeting agree unanimously to do so.
Thank you, Greg. Okay, so all in favor? And that is unanimous.
Third, that the amended annual budget bylaw 2022-23 be given a second reading.
Thank you, Jillian.
And if I could ask our Secretary Treasurer for a moment of her time, please.
Just one. All right. So, thank you very much. The Board of Education for the district adopted the 22-23 annual budget in the spring of last year. And the annual budget was compiled following a comprehensive budget cycle, which included budget assumptions used to inform preliminary estimates used regarding student enrollment, funding, and other revenue and expenditure projections for in alignment with our consultation opportunities. Although the 22-23 amended annual budget is being presented using the 22-23 annual, it's not. That's okay. The board is amending the annual budget bylaw in accordance with the School Act due to the ministry announcing an amendment or a recalculation of the operating grant in December to reflect student enrollment on September 29th, 2022. And we use the template provided by the ministry for submission of the amended budget, which is prescribed by the School Act. So the proposed 22-23 amended annual budget bylaw in the amount of $188 million and related schedules are included in the agenda package today. And they're on pages 106 forward. And the next slide looks at enrollment. So statement 2 of the amended annual of the budget book on page 109 of the board book includes actual enrollment for the summer of 2022 and enrollment as at September 22 with projections for February 2023 and May 2023 compared to actual enrollment for the summer of 2021 and as at September 2021. The above table summarizes the net increase in enrollment of full-time equivalent students from the projections in the annual budget to the amended projections in the amended annual budget. The following slides summarize the 2022-23 amended annual budget compared to the annual budget adopted at the beginning of the year based on the changes in enrollment as we've seen. Statement 2 is on page 109 of the agenda package, and this statement, along with statement 4 on page 111, contain the total revenue, expenditures, use of surplus, and purchases of capital of the district. These statements reflect the summary of information presented in series 1 through 4 schedules. Combined revenues in the amended budget on statement 2 are budgeted at $185 million, which reflects an increase of $12 million from the annual budget and $10 million increase over the prior year's amended annual budget. And we're still on page 109 of your agenda package. And the amended budget on statement 2 are budgeted at 186 million, which reflects an increase of 11.8 million from the annual budget and 6.1 increase over the prior year's amended annual budget. And again, still on page 109, the combined planned surplus utilization in the amended budget on statement 2 is budgeted at $3 million, which reflects an increase of 2.7 million from what was projected at the annual budget, and a $1.9 million increase over the prior year's amended budget. Schedule 1 on page 112 of the agenda package shows the opening accumulated surplus by fund and the anticipated changes in those balances during the 22-23 year. This slide highlights that although the accumulated surplus is reported in the June 30th, 2022 financial statements indicate a balance of total surpluses, sorry. The bottom section on this slide, that's schedule 1, indicates a balance of $46 million of surplus at the end of last fiscal year, that only 5.1 million is operating surplus, while the majority, so 40.9 million, is actually tied to investments in capital assets and local capital reserve balances, and isn't cash available at this time for district to use on expenditures. So that leads us to the amended annual budget bylaw, and the budget bylaw amount contained on page 110 of the agenda package shows the total expenses of the district at $186 million, plus the tangible capital asset purchases of $1.3 million, totaling the $188 million amended annual budget bylaw. We're going to break down the budget into more manageable pieces in the next few slides, which should help us further our understanding of the information provided. So in the information to come, we're going to look at the Series 2 schedules, which are on pages 113 through 117. And that's the operating fund, which shows the Ministry of Education and Childcare operating grant, funded FTEs included in school age enrollment, adult enrollment, summer learning enrollment, as per the official count at September 29th. The Series 3 schedules on pages 118 through 121 of the agenda package reflect the special purpose funds, which include funds such as the annual facility grant, the Learning Improvement Fund, school generated funds, Classroom Enhancement Fund, Community Link, Student and Family Affordability Fund, as well as a variety of other small programs which have specific funding. Schedule 4, which is on page 122 of the package, represents capital revenues, expenses, transfers, and asset purchases. So the combined revenues in the amended budget for all of our funds are budgeted at $188 million, which reflects an increase of 12 million over the annual budget at 173 million, and a 10 million increase over the prior year amended. Combined expenses in the amended budget for all funds is budgeted at 186.9 million, which reflects an increase of 11.8 million over the annual budget and 175 million and a 6.1 million increase over the prior year amended. Planned use of surplus in the amended annual budget at 3.5 million, which reflects an increase of 2.7 million over the annual budget and a $1.9 million decrease over the prior year amended. So the amended annual budget bylaw reflects $9.4 million of increase in operating fund expenses, a $400,000 increase in operating fund tangible capital asset purchases, a $2.8 million increase in special purpose fund expenses, a $400,000 decrease in capital fund expenses, and a $490,000 increase in tangible capital asset purchases from local capital. All right, now we're going to get into the really details, because that was really high level. I know, I like the numbers. Everybody's looking really blank. It's good. Trust me, these are interesting numbers. It's exciting. Maybe I'm the only one excited, everybody else. Okay. So this slide looks at the total operating fund revenue from Schedule 2, which is found on page 113 of the agenda package. And this is budgeted at 156.3 million, This reflects an increase from this year's annual budget of 7.6 million, which is comprised of a net increase of 6.7 million in the Ministry of Education and Childcare funding, an increase of 640,000 in other revenue, and an increase in anticipated rental and lease revenue of 250,000. Further breakdown are going to be reviewed on the next few slides. See, this is really more and more detail. That's every time I change a page, just what everybody wanted. So Schedule 2 on page 114 of the agenda package, 2A, sorry, shows operating revenue of 156.3 million in the amended budget. This amount is comprised of an operating grant from the Ministry of Education and Childcare, which I'm just going to call the ministry moving forward, as well as other revenues, rentals, and leases, and investment income. The ministry grant is the largest component of the district's overall revenue, representing over 98% of the district's funding. The December 2022 funding announcement was for an operating grant of 146.2 million, which is reduced by amounts to be recovered from First Nations governments, an estimated 447,000 for a net operating grant of 145.7 million. The district will receive LEA funding, from the McLeod Lake Indian Band and the Taco First Nation. Reflected in the annual budget is an estimate of special needs funding received of 420,000. Actual funding in the amended budget increased by 1.4 million related specifically to special needs. Other ministry grants include pay equity, which has remained unchanged for over 10 years, and a transportation supplement, which also has been unchanged for a number of years, as well as a number of other smaller grants. Additionally, the teachers and excluded exempt labor settlement funding included in the current year represents funding for teachers, principals and vice principals, and exempt staff, which has been paid retroactively to July 1 or August 1, depending on the collective agreement or contract year. Although both CUPE union memorandums of agreement have been fully ratified at this time, they were not incorporated into the amended budget as the ministry had not yet calculated and allocated the funding amount to the district. So the net increase of 2.6 million in ministry operating grants is made up of a variety of components, and I'm sure you'll all be happy if I don't go into specific detail. But on this slide, you can have a look at what the changes were between the annual and the amended. And I know trustees have already had an opportunity with an analysis that was prepared previously and presented to them at the business committee. So other revenues, still on Schedule 2A, which is page 114 of the agenda. Other revenues include revenues to be collected under the terms of the district's local education agreements with local First Nations. Revenue for education services provided to School District 93, which is the Francophone Education Saskatchewan Authority. Funding from the Industry Training Authority. Funding received to date for after-school sports initiatives. Miscellaneous revenue including various non-provincial grants such as Canadian Tire, Jumpstart Starts, breakfast clubs, and a variety of others. Revenue for administrative fees from 3 provincial resource programs hosted by the district, grants for provincial funding, and their more specific purpose grants received from ministries other than the Ministry of Education and Childcare. Recoveries from the instructional cafeteria at PGSS, a rebate related to a group provincial MasterCard, and funds collected to date from fee-paying international students. The rentals and leases in the amount of $765,000 are related to joint use agreement with the City of Prince George, rental of space in school districts to Northern Health Authority, the Department of National Defense, as well as rental of space that's surplus to the school needs to a variety of daycares and other community not-for-profit organizations. Budget investment income has increased to $500,000 thanks to the rise in the interest rate. We look at operating expenses in 2 different ways. One is operating expenses by source, And on Schedule 2B, which is page 115 of the package, it looks at operating expenses by source, which are allocated to salaries, employee benefits, and services and supplies. So you can see that there's a $6.7 million increase in salaries, which is attributable to about a $3 million increase in the teachers, or in the salaries to teachers, which are related to application of labor settlement funding adjustment, as well as an increase in teachers of approximately 12 FTE. A $4 million or $0.4 million increase in the PDP group related to application of the labor settlement adjustment. A $2 million increase in the educational assistance, which reflects over 47,000 additional hours of time and an additional 1,600 hours of IEW time and 2,400 hours of youth care worker time. And you have to keep in mind that that's all time and does not relate yet to the labor settlement adjustment. $0.1 million increase in support staff time, primarily custodial and grounds. That's what that's for. And a $0.4 million increase in other professionals related to the application of labor settlement adjustment and some minor reductions in staffing. And then there's a $0.5 million increase in substitutes, which is primarily related to an increase in the budget for replacement. The increase in benefits is proportionate to the reflection of the change in the salaries of the respective groups. And additionally, there's a $1.6 million increase in services and supplies, which is attributable to in $0.25 million increase in services, $0.37 million decrease in student transportation, $0.44 million increase in professional development and travel, 4,000 decrease in rentals and leases, a 19,000 decrease in dues and fees, a 44,000 increase in insurance, a 1.5 million increase in supplies, and a 0.24 million increase in utilities. The budget for services and supplies is almost the same as the prior amended annual budget, in spite of the rising cost of utilities, transportation, and most other operations and supplies. Additionally, it's interesting to note that in addition to the $9.4 million increase in operating fund expenses, there was also an increase of $0.4 million in tangible capital asset purchase through the operating fund for a combined increase in the operating fund of expenditures at about $9.9 million. So that's by source. I don't know whether trustees have questions by source or whether we want to wait until I go through functions. All right, I'll keep going. So Schedule 2C on pages 116 and 117 of the agenda package presents the operating expenses again, this time by function, program, and object. So it allocates them to instruction, district administration, operations and maintenance, and transportation. There's a $9.4 million increase in instructional expenditures, and it's reflective of salary increases of $6.3 million, benefit increases of $1.4 million, and services and supplies of $1.9 million. The $7,000 increase in district administration is reflective of salary reductions of $32,000, benefit reductions of $8,000, and an increase of $47,000 in services and supplies. The increase in operations and maintenance of $209,000 is reflective of salary increases of $93,000, benefit increases of $77,000, and an increase in services and supplies of $38,000. The $376,000 decrease in transportation reflects a reduction in services and supplies of approximately $376,000, primarily related to utilities or unfilled, transportation services at the beginning of the school. All right, so that would be all of the operating fund except for the surplus. So we're going to wrap up the operating fund looking at the surplus. It's important to discuss the use of operating surplus, and the annual budget approved in 2022 was balanced with an appropriation of $335,854 of surplus from the prior year The majority of that was for board-specific supports rather than a measure to balance. An additional use of surplus of 2.6 million has been identified in the amended budget, 1.9 million due to operations spanning the school year and 0.78 million related to funds internally restricted due to the nature of constraints on the funds. Most of the additional uses of surplus relate to board-specific supports, such as the return of surpluses to schools and program commitments in operations spanning the school year, and the return of unspent targeted funding to the Indigenous Education Department, funding held on behalf of union groups and others, and specific purpose grants returned to schools in the category of nature of constraint on the funds. Additionally, it's important to note that in accordance with ministerial accounting practices orders, the district is allowed to budget the operating fund in a deficit as long as they have sufficient surpluses to cover off that deficit. And that is the end of the operating fund, and we're moving on to special purpose funds. I don't know whether anybody had any questions for the operating fund? No. All right. On schedules 3 and 3A, which are pages 118 and through 121, that presents budgeted revenues and expenses for the district's special purpose funds. Special purpose funds include only those amounts received from an external party that can give rise to a liability defined by public sector accounting standards. Generally, if you're thinking about it in terms of broad brushstrokes, that's a restriction by a third party on what you can use those special purpose funds for, and an ability by that third party to take back those funds. On Schedule 3, which is page 118, it summarizes the special purpose fund revenue from 3 sources: the Ministry of Education and Childcare, other revenue, and investment income. There's a $2.3 million increase in the Ministry of Education and Childcare revenue from the annual budget, and it relates to primarily the new funds that we have. So we have a $1.4 million new student and family affordability fund, a $55,000 seamless day kindergarten pilot program, $175,000 in new early learning, and an increase in $71,000 of the provincial resource programs related primarily to revenue that had been deferred in prior years. And you can see all of those changes on some of the pages included in the budget book. The increase in other revenue reflects shifts in the scholarship and bursary funds to utilize interest income before we utilize those funds themselves. So in the expenditures for these funds, which are still on the same page, the changes in the expenses of special purpose funds directly relate to the changes in the revenue recognized for each of those funds. District administration expenses are the administration fees paid by the provincial resource programs to the operating program. Operations and maintenance expense reflects the annual facility grant, and the transportation and housing expenses are those reported in the First Nations Student Transportation Fund. All of the other special purpose funds roll up into the instruction function. And that's the end of the special purpose fund, and we now move on to the capital fund. So on Schedule 4, which is page 122 of the agenda package, the annual budget for capital revenues, expenses, the transfer of capital assets purchased from other funds and transfers to local capital reserves for future capital purchases. So when you are looking at what's included in revenue, it consists of the portion or the capital portion of the annual facility grants spent in support of maintenance, and capital funding spent on site improvements and amortization of deferred capital gain. The increase in the Ministry of Education and Childcare grant relates to the capital portion of those site improvements versus other capital assets. The increase in amortization of deferred capital revenue relates to adjustments made to the calculation between the estimated annual budget amount and the amended annual budget amount based on information from the 21-22 financial statements. And again, the expenses mirror mostly what's happening in the revenue side. So expenses consist of the capital portion of the annual facility grant in support of maintenance and the amortization of capital assets. So you will notice that in the current year, there is actually a surplus, which is unusual for our district. So in the 22-23 annual budget and in the 21-22 amended annual budget, we were predicting deficits within this fund. And again, in accordance with an accounting practices order by the ministry, the board is allowed to budget for deficits in this fund as long as the deficit isn't in excess of the difference between the amortization of the deferred capital revenue and the amortization of the tangible capital assets. And finally, we're back to the beginning to sum it all up. So on page 110 of the package, of the agenda package tonight, is the amended annual budget bylaw with a total budget bylaw amount of $188 million. This represents an increase of $12 million over the annual budget bylaw of $175 million. And that is presentation.
Thank you, Darlene. Are there any questions? Go ahead.
Just a question regarding the surplus. When we are reallocating surpluses from previous years into today's budget, that is a way of kind of spending the money that was generated by the students that were in our district on the students that are still in our district.
Yes, one of the philosophies, I guess, is to spend the money on the students that generate the dollars. So it's better if we try as a not-for-profit organization to move forward and ensure that we are spending all of the money. That said, it is also important to keep that little bit of a cushion. Although ours has, we've been drawing it down over time. I think for the last few years, the board has made very purposeful adjustments to our surplus in order to draw that down and use it for operating.
Thank you. Any other questions?
This is work that was done before me, and as being introduced to this and learning, I just want to say that I really appreciate the funds that are being allocated to families and financial support to keep students participating in extracurricular activities. And I want to say that, especially at a time where our many community members are facing the mill closure and being affected, in that that this work was being done before I was elected. So I can't take any credit for it. But seeing that the district really cares about families and students, and especially at a time with the future. So I just want to say thank you for that work that you've started a long time ago. So thank you.
Thank you, Corey. So we will now pass back to you. Go ahead, Craig.
Thank you. I'd also like to bring forward the recommendation that the amended annual budget. Oh, sorry. You're not following that up? Sorry.
Okay, no, it's okay. So we will vote on the second reading for the 22-23 amended annual budget. All in favor? And that is unanimous.
Thank you. Bring forward the recommendation that amended annual budget bylaw 2022-2023 be given the third and final reading.
Thank you, Jillian. And a seconder, please. Thank you, Erica. Oh, okay. Then we'll just do Jillian. That sounds good. Sounds good to me. Discussion and vote. Any discussion on the third reading? Hearing none, we will now vote. All in favor of the third reading for the 22-23 amended annual budget. And that is again unanimous. We'll now move on to 9.2.1, additional priority on page 123. And this is Mr. Brennan again. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to bring forward the recommendation that the event, that in the event staff are able to identify additional savings in current year operations, that priority be given to repurposing those funds to support a recruitment and retention team for the remainder of the 22-23 school year.
Thank you. Can I have a receiver, please? Thank you. Oh, there you go.
Just some background. This is a really important one for me. I just want to share the background that recruitment retention continues to be a significant challenge in School District 57 as in all northern districts. So I think this would be money well spent. And in the past, we look backwards at some good practice. We had a dedicated recruitment and retention officer who worked with principals released from our schools to travel to recruit staff to the district and achieve some success in this model. This position was eliminated in response to prior year's budget challenges, but I think it's an excellent opportunity if we're able to find the funding to bring that forward, because I really do think that recruitment and retention is just such an important issue. So.
Okay, so we'll open this up for discussion. Any comments? Erica? Okay.
I would like to propose an amendment, if I may. I appreciate the language as it is, but I'm curious what the group would think if we can amend the language to include both English and French immersion track recruitment and retention. I think it's very important that we address specifically the need to recruit French immersion teachers as well.
Thank you, Erica. We just need a motion to accept the amendment. Seconder for the amendment, please. Go ahead, Corey. Thank you. And then we'll just open this up for discussion. Okay. Any comments on the amended recommendation? I think it's super important. We need teachers. So if we can find extra money and we can put it into recruitment and retention, it's a good idea. Okay, so hearing no other comments. Yes, we will go ahead and vote on the amendment. All in favor? Again, that is unanimous.
You vote on the amended motion, which I think.
So we will now vote on the amended motion, and I'll get Darlene to read that.
That in the event staff are able to identify additional savings in current year operations, that priority be given to repurposing those funds to support a recruitment and retention team for both the English and French tracks for the remainder of the 22-23 school year.
Thank you. All right, so does anyone want to discuss? Jillian, I see your hand. Kate, just there you go.
I just want to say that I quite agree that we've heard loud and clear that this is a challenge, a big challenge for our particular district. And I think this is just a really fantastic way of acknowledging that we've heard that recruitment and retention is a vital piece for our school district.
Thank you, Jillian. Any other comments? Questions? Okay. Okay, so now we will vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous. So now we will move on to 9.3, which is the 2023-2024 budget assumptions on page 124.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, I'd like to bring forward the recommendation that in accordance with Policy 2, Role of the Board, Fiscal Accountability, the Board shall, 9.2, in collaboration with the Superintendent, identify budget assumptions and draft board priorities to be used in the creation of the annual operating budget. The following assumptions will be approved to guide the development of the 23-24 annual budget. 1, a balanced annual budget will be presented for approval by the Board of Education. 2, schools be allocated funding, be expected to develop their 23-24 organization on a similar basis as the prior year based on enrollment assumptions. 3, departments be expected to develop their 23-24 budgets on the same basis as the prior year. 4, cost pressures, primarily from inflation and statutory requirements, will be addressed for all expenditures, including employee benefits, student transportation, and utilities. 5, salaries and wages will be budgeted based on known general wage increases, expected step increases, and estimated school district average salaries and benefits. 6, in accordance with the scope outlined in the terms of reference for the budget and multi-year financial plan consultation committee, that committee will employ the values of transparency, integrity, equity, inclusion, respect, and community contained in the 21-26 strategic plan in conjunction with the directions of truth and reconciliation, equity of access, wellness, and learning. The committee will submit a report to the Board of Education at the regular public meeting following the last meeting of the committee to provide input to the Board of Education as to options for consideration with respect to enhancement of service levels when there is an anticipated surplus, or alternatively, options for consideration with respect to reduction of the services levels when there is an anticipated shortfall. 7, staff will gather information received for consultation opportunities offered in addition to the consultation committee process and present them to the Board of Education for consideration. 8, salary increases negotiated during the current round of collective bargaining, as well as the resulting increase in employee benefit costs for the Prince George District Teachers Association, QP 3742 and QP 4991, will be fully funded by the Ministry of Education and Childcare through distribution of labor settlement funding. 9, salary, employee benefits, and defined overhead expenses incurred related to the actual cost of language restored to the collective agreement with the Prince George District Teachers Association will be fully funded by the Ministry of Education and Childcare through the Classroom Enhancement Fund.
Thank you, Craig. Can I have a motion to receive, please? Seconder to receive, please. Or a seconder for the motion, please. Thank you, Jillian. Okay, would we like to discuss? Go back to Craig.
Just the rationale, the policy 2, the board will approve budget process and timelines on the onset of the budget process. Also in policy 2, the board shall, in collaboration with the superintendent, identify budget assumptions and draft board priorities to be used in the creation of the annual operating budget. And 3, the superintendent secretary treasurer reviewed the 23-24 budget timeline and assumptions with the business committee on February the 14th, 2023.
So we'll open for discussion now. Is there any questions? Okay. Hearing none. We will now vote on the 2023-2024 budget assumptions. All in favor? And that is unanimous. We'll move to 9.3.1 staff input on page 126.
Recommendation that the district, that the district reach out specifically to staff through a survey to solicit input moving forward into the 2023-24 annual budget process. And the background there is the district engages in a number of consultation opportunities throughout the budget process.
May I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Erica. And now we will open this up to discussion. Any questions?
Just a comment that I'm excited that this is one way we're going to try and engage in public consultation and consultation with partners too. So I'm just excited about this little test run here. So thank you.
Wonderful. Anything else? Okay, we will vote. All in favor of the recommendation for the staff input. Okay, that's unanimous. And we will move on to 9.4 trustee remuneration on page 127.
Thank you, Chair. Just a recommendation moving forward that policy 7, board operations. 7, trustee remuneration will be revised effective July 1st, 2023, based on the same increment, if any, as the grid lift directed by the British Columbia School Employers Association, BCP SEA, for exempt staff.
Motion to accept, please. Seconder, please. Can I have a seconder for discussion? Thank you, Jillian. And then we will bring it back to Craig.
Thank you. Policy.
Wait, just there you go.
Thank you. Policy 7, board operations. The annual remuneration for trustees will be reviewed by the Management and Finance Committee on an annual basis prior to March 31st, commencing in 2021. Also, number 2, at the September 27th, 2022 public meeting of the Board of Education, the following recommendation was approved. The policy 7, board operations, section 7.1, trustee remuneration be revised effective November 7th, 2022, based on the same increment, if any, as the grid lift directed by the British Columbia School Employers Association, BCPSEA, for exempt staff. 3, at the February 14th, 2023 Business Committee meeting, the Secretary Treasurer reviewed and discussed the annual remuneration for trustees with the committee. And the approved recommendation effective November 7th, 2022 resulted in overall cost of the district for 2022-23, a cost of $4,317.
Thank you. We'll open the floor for discussion now. Any questions? Okay. And hearing none, we will vote. All in favor? Three. Okay, all and opposed. Okay. Okay. And that motion has passed. Oh, yes. So in opposition, opposed? Erica and Corey. Yes. Okay, moving on, we will now go to the Education Committee. 10.1, the committee report. Betty Beckering, I'll bring it over to Betty.
Thank you, Chair. The recommendation that the report of the Board Education Committee held on February 7th, 2023 be received.
Thank you, Craig, for seconding.
Thank you. The Board Education Committee met on February 7th, 2023. The agendas, handouts, and video archive are available on the district's website under our district board committee meetings. And we had very similar to the presentations that were tonight by the numeracy and literacy, but we also had the grad coach presentation and early learning and trends and progress. It was a really good meeting. I really appreciated being there and hearing all that's going on in our schools with all of those items. So, and I think that the report says for itself. So thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Any questions for Betty? Oh, you do.
Just a comment, I echo Trustee Beckering. It was an excellent meeting. I was very, very excited for it. So thank you to the presenters who took the time to join us that day. It was outstanding. Thank you.
So all in favor of receiving the committee report? And that is unanimous. Moving on to the advisory committee, and I will pass this over to Jillian Burnett.
Thank you. So I'm going to make the recommendation that the report of the advisory committee meeting held on February 21st, 2023 be received.
Thank you. A seconder, please. Thank you, Erica.
Thank you. So the advisory committee met on February 21st, 2023, and with the exception of the amended annual budget, basically what we determined is that we have an awful lot of work to do. And we can expect to see some choice preference coming forward for a variety of ad hoc committees that are being revised, as well as some working groups on a number of policies. In addition to that, we also had discussion around town hall meetings and what those could look like. And I believe those discussions are still ongoing. So that is my report.
Thank you, Jillian. Now we'll just vote to receive the, oh, are there any questions for Jillian? And hearing none, we'll just vote to receive the committee report. All in favor? Unanimous. We'll move to 12 in our agenda under new business. Is there any new business to bring forward? And we'll move on to district administration reports 13.1, and I will hand this over to our superintendent, Cindy Hype.
Thank you. I'd like to begin by acknowledging and giving thanks for the work that I get to do on the unceded ancestral lands of Lheidli, supporting students here, supporting students who reside in the traditional territories of the Makahalik Indian Band, and finally the Simpcw Nation. My report's going to be a little bit different than what we're used to. Majority of our budget was, the majority of our meeting was on budget and numbers, and we've had lots of PowerPoints tonight. So I'm actually going to talk about what's happening for our students in our district and just give some acknowledgement, some well wishes, and some congratulations. Sports and school sports is an important part of a student's experience while attending school. And much like Trustee Antrim, it is a fantastic way for kids to be, Trustee Antrim feels it's a fantastic way for kids to feel connected to their school and part of the community. Starting this weekend with basketball, our Dutchess Park Junior girls qualified for provincials and will be representing School District 57 in their school at that tournament. Our PGSS girls, our College Heights Secondary girls, and our Shastee Kelly Road senior girls will all be competing at provincial championships coming up. Our College Heights secondary senior boys and our PGSS senior boys will also be participating in basketball provincial championships. And just really proud of the efforts that go in, the commitment from the students and their parents for getting them to practices and being in the stands, the audience cheering them on. Wrestling, the provincials took place last weekend, and we had students from PGSS, DP Todd, Dutchess Park, College Heights, and Shastee participate in the wrestling provincial championships representing our district. Pardon me? You brought home a gold. And we brought home a gold, that is correct. Skiing and snowboarding, provincials are wrapping up. And one thing about living in the north, we had students from Mackenzie Secondary, DP Todd, and PGSS participating in the skiing and snowboarding provincial championships. It's just finishing. And next week, gymnastics. We do have high school gymnastics teams that participate, and PGSS has students attending the provincial championships. In addition to sports, we have lots of opportunities for students to engage in competitions. And next week, the Southbridge Lego team will be competing in Vancouver. That's awesome. The Beaverley Elementary will be sending a team to the Skills Canada competition in April. So we have elementary students participating in that. School District 57 Esports Smash Tournament just concluded, and we saw students from Dutchess Park, PGSS, and DP Todd participating in esports. It's electronic sports, and it's kind of cool, and it's something that's really gaining momentum across the province, across the country, and I'm really proud that our schools have teams. And finally, this week, This weekend is the return of the Central Interior Science Fair, and I'll be looking forward to participating in events at the university on Saturday. In the areas of youth leadership, the Indigenous Education Department just hosted a youth leadership conference last week at UNBC. Students had the opportunity to listen to 2 keynote speakers, as well as circulate through tables of various organizations and businesses, and schools were invited to send students to participate in that. Our DSAC students will be hosting a leadership conference on May 11th. This is a student-run event with a focus on truth and reconciliation and mental health and wellness. And we will see guest speaker Haley Watson from the Open Parachute being one of the keynote speakers once again in our community. And finally, I will conclude by sending well wishes to our students traveling abroad during spring break. Mackenzie Secondary students will be visiting Germany, Italy, Switzerland, and France. It is wonderful that travel has opened up again and our students get these incredibly rich cultural activities. DP Todd will be visiting Italy and Spain. Students from Shasti and PGSS will be visiting Greece and then making a trip to Italy for Florence and Rome. College Heights secondary students will be visiting the battlefields in Italy and Sicily. And Duchess Park students will be traveling to Germany, the Czech Republic, Austria, and Switzerland. These are just some of the opportunities that this district provides our students. And I'm so proud of this, and just hearing of all these great experiences our kids get to have. I just want to extend my gratitude to the coaches, the volunteers, the staff sponsors, the students themselves, and as I mentioned, the parents for supporting their students and their children through these opportunities. So thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Is there any questions or comments? Yes, go ahead, Jillian.
I just have to bring up that you missed one. There is at the library, I believe there is art that's going to be on display. And I know there are a number of our students that will have some of their art displayed. So there's just a number of really fantastic in all different areas.
Thank you, Jillian. Anyone else? Yes, go ahead.
A question that's just a little bit off topic, but pertinent to the superintendent. Have you ever directed school staff to not speak to school trustees?
Corey, we will revisit that. Okay. Are there any other questions? I would like to just comment. I'm extremely proud of the students in this district. I think the opportunities that School District 57 gives the students here is incredible. Chances to grow broad and to see these things are incredible. We have students in Mackenzie that cannot wait to visit the Louvre. They're so excited, and what they're doing is they're actually creating presentations. They're picking a piece of the tour that they're going to go on, and they have to present that. And then when they go to the Louvre, they actually get a chance to talk to their class on what they studied. So, I mean, it comes full circle, and to see them all excited, it warms my heart, and I'm glad that they get opportunities that I never got. So, any other comments? Yes, go ahead, Erica.
Thank you very much for that. Any space that we can make to celebrate what is happening with our students is very exciting and always welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Any other comments today? Okay. So we move on to 14 in the agenda package, trustee reports. 14.1 is BC School Trustees Association, and I'll pass this back to Erica.
Thank you. I wrote a report, so I'm just going to read it. So this past weekend, so February 24th and 25th, I attended on our behalf to the BC School Trustees Association Provincial Council meeting. It was my first official meeting as Provincial Council rep, so you can imagine the incredible learning that has come with this past weekend. And I may be actually encroaching on Trustee Beckering's report a little bit, so I'll try not to say too much about. We had a special guest presenter from the BC Public School Employers Association, which is BCPC. And some of the meaningful news that they're working towards are developing exempt staff compensation handbooks and an HR guide. They expressed the awareness of that school boards and school districts are having the difficulties that we are having in recruitment and retention, especially in the north. So some of these conversations look like examining ways to support certification for local community members in the northern and the Northern Recruitment Initiative, which is a one-year pilot project situated in 4 northern communities and led by a contract specialist / recruitment expert, specifically led by BCPC. It was very apparent during these conversations, the challenges of recruitment and retention and in this work. For example, a trustee from the BC Interior region expressed the challenges of housing in rural communities, which is something that hasn't come across my radar. They expressed that if their district were able to hire more staff, there might not necessarily be housing to facilitate new hires. What was particularly exciting for me personally was they shared some information on French immersion recruitment. So they have a staff person specifically hired to travel to Quebec and France to attend career fairs and post-secondary institutions in attempt to connect with prospective teachers. BCPC also shared insights in how funding over the next couple of years will be used for recruitment and marketing campaign to support French immersion programming. One interesting concern that came up in this conversation was the call for supports to develop French-speaking curriculum in response to new evolutions in education. For example, where we are in education is calling for authentic, local, indigenized resources or STEAM projects, so science, technology, engineering, art, and math, for project-based learning resources. So these kinds of resources may be available or in development, but may not necessarily be available for French teachers. This was new information for me, so I wanted to share that with you all. In regards to our provincial council meeting, some business, Tracy Loeffler from the Mission School District was elected and sworn in as the new vice president, and Allison Watson has taken her place. Allison Watson is from the Sault School District and was elected and sworn in as a new director. Both positions were acclaimed. And on February 25th, the Provincial Council voted to receive the draft budget for the BC STA for the 2023-24 year. So school boards have until March 15th to submit questions, feedback on the budget, and we'll move forward for approval at the AGM April 27th to 30th. The Provincial Council also brought forward a discussion on how councillors would feel about moving the February meeting to virtual. This included some mixed responses, so more to come on that later. 2 motions came forward that were emergent in nature and needed to be decided before our upcoming meetings. The first is to advocate to the ministry to continue the Family Affordability Fund, and the second was to to advocate to the provincial government for fully funded compensation that would meet the new BCPC grid. That's all.
Thank you, Erica. Are there any other questions or comments for Erica? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to 14.2, which is BC Public Schools Employers Association, and that will be Betty.
Thank you, Chair. We've had a few communications from BCPC since the AGM, several regarding the regional meetings that begin tomorrow in the Fraser Valley. Ours for the Northern Interior will be held at the Van Bien Training and Development Center on April 17th. 8 districts have been invited and are invited to attend this in Prince George. It will be held between 1 and 4 p.m. Although there is no cost, registration is required, and the registration process was on the email that I forwarded to all of the trustees. So travel expenses are the responsibility of the school district. An update was sent regarding CLASS service, which is the acronym Coordinated Legal and Arbitration Support Services, which is a shared service that conducts grievance arbitrations and labor litigation. School psychologists will now be under the regulation of the College of Psychologists of BC. Currently, they are under the BC Association of School Psychologists. They must register by May 1st, 2024. Otherwise, school psychologists cannot use that designation. And that's my report.
Thank you, Betty. Any questions for Betty? Okay, thank you again. We'll move on to 14.3, District Parent Advisory Council, and I will pass this over to Corey.
Yeah, there was a good presentation by the district about a program called My Blueprint, and it's an online student portfolio program for students between grades 6 to 12. And I was really impressed with the versatility of the program and how it could help students not only with their education, but also in outside life, getting jobs and working towards careers past. And then there was a really good discussion about diversified and first student and the different operating policies and some questions brought up, and especially around weather operating policies, and that it was good to hear that the district is working to try to bring that together, to unify that and align in the policies, and that they're working towards that and bringing them together. So it was a good discussion. So thank you.
Any questions for Corey? Thank you, Corey. We'll move on to 14.4, District Student Advisory Council, and I will pass this over to Jillian.
Thank you. So I attended the District Student Advisory Council on February 6th. And what an engaged group of students and a real representation of our student community. They received a presentation from Big Brothers Big Sisters about volunteer opportunities for students 16 and older, where the student can be paired through compatibility matches determined through interviews with a little in grade 2 to 7, which I thought was just fantastic. And it was something I was totally unaware of. Then something really exciting happened. Superintendent Heitman gave a brief presentation on our strategic plan. And the students then broke out into table talk and answered 3 questions. And if you were in the room, I think some really valuable input was collected and given some of the comments and conversations that I overheard. Lastly, as Cindy updated us, there was an update on their upcoming leadership summit on May 11th, and their next meeting is on March 6th.
Thank you, Jillian. Any questions? Okay, thank you again. So we will now move on to the last item on our agenda, which is 15, correspondence at the back of your agenda. 15.1, there is a letter dated February 21st, 2023 from the District of Mackenzie regarding working together. And that will, I'll leave that at your leisure to read. And 16 is adjournment. So if I could have a motion to adjourn the meeting, please, at 5:48 p.m. Thank you, Jillian. Second, thank you, Betty. All in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Everyone have a good evening. We will be opening it up to public comments shortly.